Hello, Empowered Woman. Welcome to this episode of the Empowered Woman podcast. Today we'll be talking about using the moon cycle to become more self-aware and grow your business. I talked to my good friend Dawn Pensack, who is a master EFT practitioner certified in Moonology, and she not only outlined different astrology nuances you may not be familiar with, but also dove into my specific sun, moon, and rising sign to help me better understand myself and therefore lead a more aligned life and business. It was so good, and we got great feedback as we discussed this live inside my Facebook group yesterday. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the Empowered Woman podcast, the #1 show on personal growth, visibility, and profit for women entrepreneurs. If you're wanting to start believing in yourself, giving yourself permission to succeed, and let your voice be heard to make an impact in the world as an entrepreneur, this is the place for you. I am so glad that you're here. My name is Marcia Spurk, and I'm your host, triplet mom, woman empowerment coach, and all things motivation extraordinaire. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode.
Before we get to it, I wanted to give a special shout out to another podcast who's making an amazing impact in the world, the Happy Brain Podcast. We all know mental health is important, but sometimes it can feel super heavy. Why isn't there a way to improve your mental health and actually have fun doing it? That's where the Happy Brain Podcast can help. In less than 15 minutes, Heather Parody explores outside of the box ways to not only improve your mental health, but have a freaking great time doing it. Search for the Happy Brain Podcast with Heather Parody today and start making your mental health journey and your brain a little happier. Well, welcome, Dawn. Thank you so much. So we'd scheduled this. And then this morning I was like, what do you think about just doing it live so that people can benefit from the conversation? You know, you get the exposure. I did get the exposure because we're talking about me. I'm all about the exposure, and it's amazing, useful information too. So tell us, Dawn, who you are, what you do, and then you're going to be guiding it all. So
awesome. Yeah. So my name is Dawn Pensack. I have been doing EFT. I've been an EFT practitioner for many, many years, helping people process stress, emotional challenges, beliefs, and things like that. But this year, I dove into this idea of living a life, a conscious life aligned with the cycles of the moon. And it's been so life-changing. It has just opened my eyes and opened up opportunities in ways I could never have imagined. So so then I got certified in Moonology. I know it is actually a thing, even though it sounds a little bit crazy.
Right.
But so now I help people, specifically business owners, align with the cycles of the moon so that they can grow their business with more ease and also really increase their level of self-awareness. Because as we all know, and as you talk about all the time, the more we know ourselves, the more aligned, we're going to create a business that feels better, is more aligned, and grows so much easier.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And let me ask you, will we need to share the screen? Do you need to show anything to exemplify or not really? Okay.
Yeah.
Because just a quick parenthesis, so we had a session. So you've been offering sessions, and I'd love for you to talk about that as well so that people can connect with you afterwards. To get a glimpse of the chart. Mm-hmm. So I don't know all the names, but we had a session where you showed me exactly what we were going to be talking about here, but more in depth, of my sun sign, the moon sign, and the rising sign, and how to align that with full moon and new moon, and look at my houses and be like, so this is what I need to be focusing on for this full moon. And then next month it's going to be different, but I have the chart to look for those things. And what's fascinating is that we had the session, I think, when was it? It was like somewhere September. I don't know. It was a while back.
Yeah.
And then last time there was a full moon, because we talk all the time on Voxer, and you were telling me, well, for you, look at your house and blah, blah, blah. This is what's happening. And it was exactly what was actually happening in my life, like paying attention. So it's been really fun to see the synchronicities. And I don't know how to explain them. So take it away.
Yes. So the first thing to know is that we have 3 signs. We have the sun sign, the moon sign, and the rising sign. Most people are very familiar with their sun sign. Like I know you and I, we're both Sagittarius sun signs, December babies. And a lot of us know what our sun sign is. Like Gemini, born in May, Capricorn, early January. But we don't really know much past that. And we don't really know how to use our knowledge of the sun sign to live a more aligned, more conscious life. So our sun sign gives us a lot of guidance into how we connect with our identity, like who we really, really are at our core. And it also helps us to re-energize. So if we feel like we're down in the slumps, if we feel like it just feels like there's so much resistance and we're pushing. I know I've been there many times in the business journey, right? It's like, okay, how can I tap into my sun sign, who I really am? And does this feel good? Like, this feel like it's a good path to take, right? Mm-hmm. So our sun sign is really, really important. Now, if somebody has a fire sign as their sun sign, like a Sagittarius is a fire sign, or a Leo or an Aries, they are going to re-energize in a very, very different way than if somebody has a sun sign of, let's say, Aquarius or Capricorn or Taurus, right? Every zodiac sign has a different flavor. It has a different vibe, just like every moon has in the zodiac signs of the moon. I mean, there's so
many details. So let me stop you right there to say, for the people that are watching us, and then later on, because we're turning this into a podcast episode as well. And then you can reach out to Dawn directly and ask questions, but let us know if you know what your sun sign is, because I think that's a huge point. Many people think it stops there. Oh, this is my sign. No, but there's more than one for each person. And I love that you said it is a fire sign. So besides knowing the sign, there's nuances to each of the signs. Can you tell us what are those, just so people know?
Yeah. So we have 4 elements: fire, air, water, and earth. Okay. And the fire signs, we have Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. For earth, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. Air is Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And then water, Cancer, Pisces, and Scorpio.
Okay.
So knowing the sign and then understanding the element and kind of like the vibe of that sign can give us a lot of guidance into how we can use our sun sign to re-energize. So, and thinking about like feeding the sun, right? The sun's energy, as we know, very strong, very bold, very bright, very loud, very hot, right? So when we are in our sun sign and we are really living a life true to, like, we're Sagittarius suns. So when we're living a life true to like expansion and travel and learning and having fun, right? That's a huge part of the Sagittarius vibe. Yes. When we're living in alignment to that, we're feeding our sun sign and we're actually connecting more with who we are. So we're in alignment. Then we have our moon sign, which was a huge breakthrough for me because my sun sign, Sagittarius, fire element. Mm-hmm. My other sign, which we'll get to in a minute, is also a fire element. But I was living a life that was so like fiery. Mm-hmm. There was so much action. There was so much like masculine energy of doing. But when I learned my moon sign, which is how we connect with our subconscious, how we connect with our emotions, okay, and how we really nurture ourselves, which in turn helps us nurture others, right? Uh-huh. But it's like the darker, more nurturing, it's a very different energy than like the moon versus the sun, right? It's a very, very different energy. So if we know what our moon sign is, and we're able to tap in to the best way for us to connect with our emotions, for us to connect with our subconscious, for us to connect with our soul, and to restore our energy.
Okay.
So if we know the sun sign and the moon sign, and we're in alignment with both of those energies, we can feel energized, but we can also feel restored.
So the moon sign is your connection with your subconscious. What is the sun sign again?
The sun sign is our connection with ourself, like our identity.
Okay, identity. And the moon, what's the difference there?
So the sun sign is like who we really are.
Okay.
Like at our core. The moon side is how do we connect with our soul? Like how do we connect with that deep, deep, deep part of ourselves, which for a lot of us, like we don't really go that deep, right? We kind of look at the superficial stuff. Like, this is how I feel. I'm just going to go with my emotions right now. I feel happy. I don't feel happy, whatever it is. but we're not really looking at like the depths of our soul or using the moon sign, using that energy to help us restore. A lot of times we're taught, and I mean, we see it everywhere, that self-care is XYZ, right? Take a bubble bath, get a massage, go for a hike. But self-care for a Taurus moon sign is very different than self-care for an Aries moon sign. Or self-care for a Capricorn moon sign, which is you, which we'll talk about in a minute. So we can use our moon sign to customize our self-care practices as well.
Interesting. And that's why when we hear those suggestions, we're like, this doesn't work for me. There must be a problem. I can be consistent with it, but it's like, that's not what works for you. Literally, it has to be something else. And as business owners, when we're suggesting things to people, having this in mind for ourselves, we will be more aware of how it may be different for them as well. So I love that. And I have a comment here. Zainab said, where's my comments? Oh, she says, love the effect of the moon that balances the energy of the sun. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and we need that balance, especially, oh my gosh, we don't want to burn out, right? That would be the worst. So having that balance is key.
And the rising sign, where does that come in?
So the rising sign is really interesting because that is how others perceive us. So that is our mask, our social mask, the way others perceive us. So it's really fascinating to think about, like, for instance, if somebody's a Leo rising sign, right? And they show up in this world as somebody full of energy, like very proud, very bold, right? Their energy is massive. But their sun sign, like how their true identity, let's say, is a Capricorn. So when they are truest to themselves, they're doing something very Capricorn-like, which is Capricorn energy is very serious, very business-minded, very practical, analytical. It's an earth sign. So it's very grounded and stable. Whereas the Leo is fiery and bold, So there could be sometimes, and this happens a lot, where there could be like a mismatch. So you see somebody, right, on social media, or you see somebody who's very Leo-like, but then you meet them and it's like you're meeting a completely different person, and there's no good or bad or judgment there, but the rising sign is just the way that others perceive us. So it's interesting to know that. And it's like our social mask. Right. So that's the rising sign. And then the rising sign, the way that it's custom, because like you and I, we were both born in early December. So we're both Sagittarius sun signs, but we were born in completely different parts of the world. Right. So when we look at the chart, when we pull the information for the chart, the rising sign is very custom to the exact location where we were born.
That's so crazy.
So so like Sagittarius, right? There's tons of people with Sagittarius sun signs based on the day they were born. But what was the universe? What were the stars? How are things aligning in that exact location? That's right. What was the energy like in that exact location? So so it's pretty cool. And the rising sign tells us about our houses. So we use the rising sign to know where our houses are. So we always start with house number 1 with our rising sign. So the house is basically, I know you mentioned that before. When we know our houses, when we know how the certain vibe of the full moon or the new moon is affecting a certain area in our life. So we just had the Aries full moon. For you, it's activating a different part of your life than for me. We have different rising signs. I'm Aries, you're Leo. So even though, and this is like, we can go so deep into this work, but the rising sign helps us to see, to kind of map out our chart.
And let me just show it for the people that are actually watching us. And I spilled some coffee here, but I'm holding on to this, Dawn. It's here. So this is when I had my session with Dawn. And I'm sure people that are into astrology and signs and stuff have seen this, because I remember seeing this, but this is what she's mentioning when she's talking about the houses, and it goes from 1 through 12, right? Or 10. Or no,
12.
Is it 12? Okay. Okay. And then depending on, and this is stuff that I remember asking you, how do I know what is the house for this full moon? That's something that you can just Google and it'll say, but then you have your specific chart and you go look to see what that means for you, that specific moon. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you can, like, the Aries full moon has a particular energy, right? It's very, like, the Aries energy is all about new beginnings. It's very bold. It's very, it can be a little bit like a bulldozer-ish and kind of just plow through things. So with this last full moon, the overall vibe was very Aries-ish.
Okay.
There was a lot of tension. Like, a lot of people felt a lot of emotions, right?
Yes.
For you specifically, yes, it was kind of a wild time.
It was.
For you specifically, the Aries energy, that Aries moon, that Aries energy is activating your 9th house. So if you look at that chart, you know, you can go into the 9th house, which is travel, study, the great cosmic quest, broadening the mind, gaining perspectives. So because it's a full moon, we want to look at releasing and letting go. When it's a new moon, it's very different. But at a full moon time, you want to look at what we can release and let go of. I like to tell people, okay, at the full moon, I want you to ask yourself these 4 questions. So you can look at your chart. Okay, look at that house, that particular area in your life that's being activated, and ask yourself, where do I have fear? Where do I have resistance? Where do I have judgments? And where do I have attachments?
Okay.
Or what am I attached to? When you ask yourself those 4 questions, you have such a focused, such a great idea of what you can work on releasing.
Right.
Who do you need to forgive? How, like, what do you need to release? What do you need to let go of? The full moon period is the time for releasing, is the time for letting go. Because in that releasing and letting go, we can actually open ourselves up to receiving.
Which is then the new moon.
The receiving. So yes, we have to be open to receive in order to receive the new moon wishes. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like the new moon period is the time of planting the seeds, mapping out our action, taking the action. And then in the full moon period, that's when we nurture the seeds that we've planted. We nurture the ideas. We don't start anything new. Like, don't, no. In the new moon time, yes, you do start new things. In the full moon time right now, it's not a good time for starting anything new. It is a time for nurturing.
Okay.
And in that nurturing and in that nurturing, right, what we've planted, we see harvest. We see things starting to grow. We see things starting to get momentum and starting to gain traction. And then that's when, you know, we see the manifestations,
right?
And we're able to see things come to life.
And that's about like a 2-week period. So you would say every month, in general terms, for about 2 weeks, you're more on the nurturing phase. And for about 2 weeks, you're more in the let's take action and start things or do things maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we have this balance. And so in the new moon phase, so we're coming up to a new moon next week on the 4th. So November 4th. We have a new moon in Scorpio. So that's going to be a different part of your house to focus on, or a different part of your chart. But that's the time when you get really clear on your intentions. You get really certain on your intentions. Like, a lot of people set a lot of intentions and they're not very clear, or there's not like a lot of feeling behind them. And then they get frustrated that they're not seeing things come to life. So the new moon time is to get really, really clear on your intentions, what you're building, what you're creating, what your new moon wishes are, and then to plan the action for that. So that's like a time of really focused hustle, aligned hustle. There's also opportunities throughout the whole entire cycle for reflection and letting go and tweaking and things like that. But that's the time for hustle. Then when you hit the full moon phase, the full moon is the highest point in the cycle. Energy is the highest. It's kind of a culmination point. That's when you say, okay, take a deep breath, and you can kind of like look at everything that you've been working on. Mm-hmm. You can make the tweaks and the adjustments and things like that, but it's also the time of looking at what do you need to release and let go of. So these things can really start to grow and manifest. So there are, each month, we typically have a new moon and a full moon. Mm-hmm. So we have the opportunity for that really focus aligned hustle, mm-hmm. and then the opportunity to kind of rest a little bit. The full moon period is not a time of like doing nothing, because some people are like, oh my gosh, there's no way that I could work for 2 weeks and take 2 weeks out. Yeah. So it's just, it's a really great time to focus on the nurturing part.
Okay.
So it's not the creation phase. Creation takes so much energy, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. It's a time of nurture. It's a time of reflection. Mm-hmm. And so we always have that opportunity to look at the things that we've been building and say, all right, is this still in alignment with me? What can I tweak? What can I change a little bit? What can I hone? What can I develop even more? Mm-hmm. And so we have that opportunity to reflect. So we have that balance each month.
So going back to my specific situation here, because for those of you who are hopping on right now, we were talking about how there's not just one sign. Every person has 3 signs. Usually when we don't know much about this. You just are aware of the sign of the month you were born, essentially. But there's other things that come into play depending on where you were born, the time and all of that, which are the other signs. So you have the sun one, which is the one most people know, the moon sign and the rising sign. And then we were going to discuss here my unique combination, which you mentioned it before, but now that I'm understanding more, all 3 of mine are fire signs.
No, you have, your moon sign is Capricorn, which is an earth sign. Okay. Yeah.
So tell me about those combined, what that means and how I can help myself knowing this information.
Yes. So the first thing that's really interesting, and I kind of chuckled when I saw your chart, because your rising sign is a Leo. Mm-hmm. And that's how a lot of your audience connects with that energy. Obviously, right? Like, obviously. So you have a very Leo appearance to the rest of the world, right? This is the mask that we see, is this very proud, very courageous, very big energy, right? You like the spotlight. You like to be center stage. And that feels good for you. And that's how a lot of us. So a lot of people connect with that. And I'm sure people who are watching live are like, oh my gosh, yes, like that. I totally see that. Mm-hmm. Then we look at your sun sign. So when you are most connected with who you really are, when you're most connected with Marta, like at her core, you are in a very Sagittarius-like energy. And you can also see that in your social media and in your posts, because you like to have fun. A Sagittarius energy is very lighthearted. Right. It's a very fun energy. It's a very much like on the go. Like you like to be on the go. You like to have lots of things on your plate. You like to be involved in so much, right? That is actually very fueling for you. That's very energizing for you. Yes. Okay. Whereas, somebody who has like a Capricorn sun, like that would be so exhausting. They'd be like, no, but for you,
even if they're perceived as Leo. So kind of seeing, they may be perceived like that, but when they feel at best is different than what I am, for example.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because there's a lot of people that will have Leo as their sun sign. So the world sees them as this very big, expansive, bold, energetic person. Mm-hmm. But if they don't understand how they best connect with who they are and how they best connect with their self, they could burn out fast from that energy, from living a life that's too Leo. Okay. And not stepping back into their whatever energy, right? Their sun sign. Okay. So for you to really make sure that you are energizing yourself regularly, you want to tap into that Sagittarian side. So the travel, the lighthearted, the fun, studying, right? Studying and learning. There's a big part of Sagittarius energy that wants to be learning and expanding and growing. So that is the Sagittarius sun. And then what's really interesting for you that I think will be really interesting for everyone listening too is that your moon sign is actually Capricorn. So when you are feeling like when your world is feeling a little crazy and there's things that are kind of outside of your control, things that are happening that you can't necessarily control, you, the best way for you to feel grounded and stable is to tap into that Capricorn energy, which is, okay, it's business-like, it's serious, it's focused, it's like methodical, logical. So maybe writing a list of like, okay, what can I accomplish right now? And the other thing I'll say too is that the Capricorn moon sign can feel restored by working and by actually producing something. I know it sounds crazy, right?
Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Okay.
That would not work for me. If my life is feeling upside down and I'm feeling stressed, and if I start to try to actually work and produce something, that's not going to be productive.
Okay.
Even though my moon sign is also an Earth, it's a Taurus, but it's different. So we really have to know these things about ourselves.
Right.
But
that's the difference.
Yeah. But for you, that need for control or that desire for control. So when you feel really stressed or anxious, it's like, okay, what can I control right now? And what can I do right now to feel control?
Okay.
A lot of Capricorns will kind of reset themselves by doing a workout, by doing some exercise.
Oh my gosh.
For me as a Taurus, exercise is not the best form of self-care for me when I'm feeling stressed or anxious. It's very different. But for Capricorns, it's like, okay, press play, do the workout. You have a beginning, you have an end, you accomplish something. You feel productive, which is really important for Capricorn moon.
Yes.
Lunar Capricorn, right? You feel productive and you feel better.
That is so
also,
true. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, and just to say one thing, because I didn't know this, but I knew a little with knowing myself. And I always say that I'm such a junkie for all personal awareness or personal discovery stuff. And I think they all complement. And that's why even though growing up, astrology and all this stuff was so off limits because of my Christian background and all of that, I have come to see how it makes sense and it complements the other stuff. So for example, just a quick example, because the main tool that I have used in my journey has been the Enneagram. And I felt so seen, so understood, and so embraced when I saw that I was a 3. And a lot of the descriptions of the 3 talk about being efficient, being methodical, being disciplined, right? And I don't necessarily see a whole lot of that in my life at times. And it bugged me because it's like, it is me, but this part is not really, except people do see me as efficient in some aspects. And one of the things that several times have been mentioned to me was, you're so disciplined with your workouts. And it's like, that's about the only thing that I can't say no to because I know I need it and I didn't know why I needed it. And now you're telling me that that's the thing that helps me reset. So how can I apply this to other areas in my life? Because I can't be working out all day, right? So what are some other things that I can do to help me with that and to understand that I do have the ability of being disciplined, of being efficient, and now I can lend this to other areas. So just to say that I have observed this and I didn't know that it was actually a thing. So this is amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one of the things to think about, another thing to think about, especially with the Capricorn moon sign, is an overdeveloped pattern of doing, right? And I know.
Don't attack me, Dawn.
But one of the things that can be really helpful too, because, for a Capricorn or for anybody, is planning intentional time off, which is going to feel so hard. However, we want to have balance and, like think about working out, right? You don't want to overdevelop certain muscles, right? Because then other things are going to happen. And there's going to be pain in other areas. But when we know that we have an overdeveloped area and working on balancing that, okay, at times, and for you as a Capricorn moon, being very strategic about how you do this, but scheduling, like actually planning, because there are some types that need to schedule time off, need to actually schedule off time. And in that process, letting go of the attachment to, I have to, like, production makes me happy. Production makes me feel better. Production makes me, a more committed business owner, or production leads to really great results, right? Like whatever it is, whatever attachment is there, releasing that when you plan this time off.
Okay.
And every time, and this has been something like with different issues, but this has been something really amazing for me. I had to break this need to be busy, this pattern of like working all the time. And it was just ridiculous. But I know so many people who are listening to this or watching this can relate.
Yeah.
Right. So
just a comment, somebody else says, I totally do this, love all this so much. So people are resonating.
Oh, awesome.
Ask questions if you have it, as Dawn is going to. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if we have this overdeveloped pattern of doing, which so many of us have, it's a really great practice to start to develop the pattern of, I am just as worthy when I'm doing nothing. And it takes time and it takes really intentional consistency to balance that out, because you as a lunar Capricorn, this is your default, right? You will always default to producing something in times of stress and anxiety, because it's like literally built into your DNA. Like this actually does help you with stress and anxiety. And, but also, balancing that out as well. And when you look at how to balance that pattern and how to break that pattern, every time you take that time off and you want so badly to do something, like to check your phone, to respond to a message, all these things that like we've all been there. Anytime you ignore that urge, you're poking holes in the pattern and you're weakening the pattern.
Okay.
And you're actually then
you're telling me there's hope,
which is going to be really, really powerful, because you may have a very overdeveloped pattern of being busy. And that has probably felt really, really, really good for you because of this lunar Capricorn. So then, that, bringing more balance into your life. But when you know your moon sign, and I honestly think this has been one of the biggest breakthroughs for me personally, and one of the biggest breakthroughs for people that I work with and people in my community, is that we're so much more than just one thing, right? We all know that. Yes. We all know that deep down. But we are so conditioned to be so masculine. Like we live in a world where we get rewarded for the action. And we believe that we see the results because of the action that we're taking. Whereas it's really, we see the results because we're opening ourselves up to receiving, right? One post could bring in 50 new clients.
Right.
50 posts could bring in one new client. I mean, there's no way that you know what I mean? Right. Like if we attach our work and our production to our worthiness or our results, it can get really, So understanding.
And I was going to say, which again, this whole attaching your worthiness to what you're doing is 100% Enneagram 3. So it's just so interesting how the whole combination of my 3 signs point to what an Enneagram 3 is, which it's confirmation of the things I've already. And I just want to read some comments because they were too funny. Chrissy says, but then who's going to do all the things that need to get done? Just kidding. I need to develop a pattern of rest. So we all struggle with it too. Carmen says, how can I learn more about myself? Just so for those people that are like, great, Marta, we're talking about you here. What can they do to find out all these signs and obviously go and work with you? And we'll talk about this as we're wrapping up. Popped up.
Cool. Yeah. So, does anybody, Marta, where do you want to take the conversation from here? And does anybody have any like specific questions?
Well, my main thing is, and it's so interesting that we were doing this right now, because I was sharing with you that I was talking to my mentor, which for those of you who know, she's been on the show a million times or a couple of times. Gabby Abrams. I was just talking to her and I love that we're so alike. And I'm like, I need you in my life because you understand what it's like to be me in some capacity. Because when we look at, and I need to ask her about her signs, because that'll be fun. Because I know about the Enneagram and the human design. We're like pretty much identical Siamese twins. And to see all the things that she's doing and accomplishing, I really wanted to pick her brain to say, how do I freaking calm myself down, please? How do I release this anxiety, which you just described, with the whole, doing, and I'm a Leo and Sagittarius. And it's just, when do I take a breath in my life and feel okay taking a breath? And she was talking about how tapping has helped her because several times in my journey, people have said, just journal, do a 1 hour meditation. And I'm like, friend, I don't have this kind of time. Or I can't sit still for that long. And when she mentioned tapping being some like pattern interrupt that works for her because it's just 1 minute. Because even saying, go find a video of Brad on YouTube and I look at the video and it's 10 minutes, it's impossible in my head. I don't have that kind of time either. And I know it's all, in my head, but you know what I mean? Like, and now looking at my sign, it makes sense that this is how I feel. It's not, so I feel super seen that I'm not this weirdo that just can't sit still. It's how I was born, So I love that. And she mentioned tapping because you could literally just do 1 minute. I can do 1 minute. That's a lot more doable for me. And having her say that has helped her was like, okay, so I can do this. And you being an EFT master practitioner, I was like, Dawn, help me. So I guess give me some hope.
Yeah. So this is what I would recommend. And this is where like knowing our signs, and I love how you brought in like the Enneagram and the human design. I mean, things integrate so beautifully with one another. So what I would recommend, so like, let's look at the pattern of a Capricorn. Capricorns like to produce, right? They like to have a beginning and an end. They like to actually have a product or a result, right? They also tend to like control, right? They like a system, a process. Okay. They like to be doing something, like to be working at something. So what I would recommend with tapping is something super, super simple. So you can do a minute that, you just said, I can do a minute, right? You also want to feel like you can control something. So what I would recommend for you is set a timer for a minute.
Okay.
And go through the tapping points, right? So go through the tapping points, tap on each point for 7 times.
Okay.
And take a deep breath on each point. Like that is all I would recommend. Because for you, the biggest question that's going to help you get out of the stress and the overwhelm is, what can I do now? What can I do now? And if you wanted to go even deeper into the whole healing process, right, and connect more with your emotions and things like that, that's a little bit hard for a Capricorn to really connect deeply with the emotional side. But like for you right now, or if you're feeling stressed or anxious, or you just feel like there's so many things outside of your control, right, that's going to affect you a lot more than me. Things being out of control or chaotic, they don't really bother me so much. But for you, it's different. So I would set a timer for 1 minute, right? I would tap on each of the points 7 times. So actually count, like do the counting and take a deep breath. And as you're doing this, or before you do this, set the intention of, what can I do right now?
Okay.
Go through it and then check in with yourself and notice how you feel. And I bet you would feel a lot better because you did something that you can control. There was a beginning, middle, and end, right? You actually produced something. You could check something off your list. And now you hopefully have an answer to what is the next step.
Okay. I love that. So, that's simple enough.
Yeah. So that's, something. So, and, if somebody is not a lunar Capricorn, it could be so different for them.
Right.
And if you're listening and you're like, that just would not work for me, I hear you. That's why we really, knowing these signs can really give us a huge insight into who we are and how we best handle our life and how we get into alignment.
And let me see, I want to mention this to you because Chrissy is on and she's kind of like Siamese twin a little bit. She's not so much spotlight. So there's that. But she said, my moon is Cancer, sun Aquarius, and rising is Sagittarius. And then she talks about, how I'm obsessed with how all the personality tests all support each other. Mia says, human design is my tool choice. They sync with one another. And then she said, should I tap with affirmations or just tap for 7 minutes? Because not knowing what to say is what stops me from tapping, even though I really like it. So that's for me too. I was like, just tap, but I don't know what to say. Now you've got that off. I don't even have to.
You don't even have to say anything.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I wanted to take it as, but not, so, what could I say?
Yeah. So, okay. This is the thing. There's a lot of different ways you can tap, like a million different ways you could tap. The first thing that I would always recommend is to just do tap and breathe.
Okay. The
breathing is going to reset your, it's going to help you get out of that sympathetic nervous system. It's going to help you, get into the parasympathetic. It's just going to help reset your nervous system in a huge way. So doing tap and breathe, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can breathe on each of the points. Mm-hmm. You can breathe on every other point, every third point. It doesn't matter. Just a little side note though, if you are really stressed and anxious and you're going through the tapping points and breathing on each point, you might be so oxygen deprived and not realize it that you might start to feel a little dizzy or lightheaded.
Okay.
So just be aware, right? Be aware of how you feel. And if you start to feel dizzy or lightheaded, just, pause for a moment.
Okay.
But, so tap and breathe, right? Would be the first thing. The next thing that I would say is to tap and rant. So literally
do that.
Just rant, get it all out.
Okay.
As you're tapping. Now that'll help you feel better in the moment, but it's not the best long-term solution, right? Because it's not usually solution focused. It's usually problem focused. This is, oh my goodness, kind of ranting, but you will feel better in the moment.
Okay.
And then the next thing that I would recommend is to, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? So connect to the emotion, connect to where the emotion is in your body. Okay. So if you're feeling, and some people are going to have a harder time getting really present in their body. Mm-hmm. Okay. But if you can, and you can really think about, where is this emotion in my body? And naming that emotion, then you can go through the points. And the easiest way to do this is to just call it out and say, this stress in my belly, or this lump in my throat, or this burning sensation in my chest, and just call it out. Literally bring your attention to the physical sensation in your body.
Okay.
And that's going to help your body process and release it. So those are some of the easiest ways to get started and to use tapping as a self-help tool.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that would work well for me based on my situation of the signs and everything. Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
That is super helpful and something that I can easily incorporate. It doesn't seem too overwhelming, but it also feeds my need for the control. It's so helpful to know that this is who I am. I don't know how else to say, because when you compare with other people, you're like, they're so calm. I have some kind of disorder, but, and I think people maybe look at me and think, you're so patient and you're calm. I have had people say this to me, when I'm dealing with my kids, and then I'm thinking, I don't know so much, because maybe the way that I feel inside at times does not necessarily show to people, but I've been coming to realize that there's a lot of anxiety inside of me. And I would have never said this had I not gone through this whole personal growth journey, because it's no, I can take charge and go do what needs done, but that doesn't mean that I am not stressed, And when you talk about growing a business, I feel like I've been very, very stressed wanting things to happen. Now things have been really happening and happening consistently. And I have several people around me telling me, how can you make it easier? Now that it's happening, how can you make this more fun? How can you make it easier? Since it's not just throwing spaghetti at the wall, it's been validated and it's been confirmed. And I just don't know how to do it because I'm so used to it being so hustly.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So, any insight on that front?
Yes. So this is so awesome. So awesome. And yeah. Okay. The biggest thing that I would say is because you've been so much in that masculine energy and in that Capricorn type energy, right? Going into more of like your Sagittarius and more of your Leo type energy, more of that like fun, fiery side. But I would also say that really focusing on how you can receive. How can you receive even more? Like, what would it look like if things were so easy? There was so much flow. And one of the things that I'll say is like the pattern, right? That's been overdeveloped. The muscle that's been overdeveloped has been the really, really, really hard work and hustle muscle.
Yes.
Okay. So that is like massive, like super strong. And then on the other side, the weak is the ease and the flow.
Okay.
So how can you focus more on the ease and the flow and make things really, really, really light? So like making this seem like a game.
Right.
What could be the easiest way to do XYZ? What could be the easiest way for me to grow this or launch this or do this? And I'll give you guys a quick example. There's a million ways to launch. There's a million ways to create a program, right? And a lot of times we look at how to automate something, right? Like we have this idea, we create all this content, we have these massive libraries and, yada, yada, yada. And then we're just going to share with a couple people, everybody's going to join. And now we have a program. But what if for you, you feel most alive and most connected with a real person? Not with a name, like Bing, Sally just signed up for your course or whatever. Maybe your style of launching your business. And this is something that personally for me, I've been tapping into a whole lot more lately because I thrive with that connection. And I don't want to have these launches, these automated launches, the 3-part series, at least not right now in my life.
Right.
I want to have that personal connection. So thinking too, what would make this so fun, so light, so enjoyable for me? And then how can I translate, how can I actually do the work to get to that point? If you love talking with people and connecting with people really energizes you, maybe open up your calendar for more connection calls and more collaboration opportunities. If that seems like death, like, oh my God, I would never, like, no. Then what else can you do?
Right.
That's going to feel, that's going to fuel your sun, fuel your energy, but also feel restorative so that you always have that balance and you're not feeling burned out, or you're not creating a business or business structures that feel so heavy. Now that you've done all of this work, you've laid all of these systems, you've done so much on the ground level, like that's very Capricorn-like.
Yeah.
Now it's like tapping into that Sagittarius side of having this really fun, lighthearted, energy of, yeah. Okay. So, kind of using that balance. So asking yourself, the other thing too, like my mentors are always asking me, it's like, does that feel expansive? So when you find yourself getting ready to do something, ask yourself, does that feel expansive? And if it doesn't feel expansive, how can I make this expansive? So just asking yourself those questions over and over.
Always checking in with yourself. That's like the biggest takeaway, I think, from business. And I always say motherhood, everything is asking yourself, how does this feel? Because we go about life and we don't take that into account, and especially when you're trying to follow specific strategies and people that say this is the way, and then you go and do it and like, okay, it did work. Sometimes it does not work. Then it's like, all right, it's not for me. But sometimes it does work and you're like, but I could never do this again. I will kill myself if I do this again. Just like what you're saying with the automations. Some people say this is the way. You go and try it and it's like, I'm exhausted. I couldn't possibly do this again. And it's understanding how you operate best. So it's not that it's the wrong way. It's just that it may not be the most helpful way for you necessarily as a person. And something else that I thought when you were talking is that time and time again, you will see people saying, you know, I hit this huge milestone and I feel like crap. I feel miserable. I hate my life. I remember so clearly listening to James Wedmore. I think he was in Manifestations Bay podcast, or was the other way around. And he was saying, I'm sure he's shared this story several times, when he had like $100,000 launch. And then for weeks, he was binging on Netflix in his robe. Like he was depressed. Yeah.
He fell into the darkest depression of his entire life. Yeah.
And then for somebody looking from the outside, it's like, you should be the happiest man on earth right now. Mm-hmm. And of course, I don't know all the details, but these things do happen. And the reason being, you're not checking in with yourself, you're burning out, you're doing all these things that from the outside look super amazing, but on the inside feel empty. So check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yes.
Right? Oh, I love this conversation so much. And so many people are like, this is amazing. This is amazing. So tell us how to find you, what the best way is to going about understanding the moon cycle, how you can help. Give us all the deets.
Yeah. So if you guys, and I know we went over a lot today and we barely scratched the tip of the iceberg in the power of really learning this and understanding this and aligning your life and your actions with who you are, like what was written in the stars, right? When you were born. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested in diving deeper into this, I do offer free 30-minute sessions where we go over, just like what you had, Marta, we go over your sun sign, moon sign, rising sign. We look at your houses, and we also look at a 3-month plan. So what's coming up for you in the next 3 months, and how can you use that information for your business and your personal life, right? To feel more aligned, to find more joy and more fulfillment in what you're doing. So if you want to sign up for that, you can go to, and I'm sure we'll share the link, but dawnpensack.com/moon guidance. So if you look for dawnpensack.com/moon guidance, you'll see that. You'll be able to sign up. And then if you want to connect with me on Instagram, it's just at Dawn Pensack, Facebook at Dawn Pensack EFT. And I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions or like what your biggest takeaway was from the session. So hopefully you learned something new. Maybe you learned something new about yourself, or you just, your curiosity was piqued with how you can use this information to really feel so much more alive and so much more balanced.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Dawn. This was so fun. I hope the ladies that were here live will contact you, and also the ones that are going to be listening to the podcast. Of course, I get the benefit of it all because Dawn is a good friend. So we're always going back and forth. Lots of people are saying, so cool. Thank you so much. I learned a lot. Wow. This was so fun. Thank you so much, Dawn. I could be here for hours.
Yes. Thank you so much for inviting me to share this with your audience. And thank you to everybody who's listening.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope this was helpful. I hope it got you intrigued into looking further into your signs and all the information to help you feel more aligned in your life and in your business. Don't forget to connect with Dawn and take her up on her offer of a free session where she's going to really get down into your own details and your signs and all of that. Leave the show a review if you haven't already, and join us in the Empowered Women community on Facebook. Let's stay connected. Until next time, bye.